voice. It is a rain that grows flowers, not thunder.
Thank you. We now move to the next item of business, which is topical questions. Question number 1, Kezia Dudley.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what its position is on the resignation of the Head of the Curriculum for Excellence ahead of the first sitting of the new national exams.
Secretary Michael Russell.
Presiding Officer, the Scottish Qualifications Authority has made clear that the new qualifications will be unaffected. The individual, Mr Roderick Gillespie, is part of just one of 8 different teams within SQA who have been involved in the Curriculum for Excellence. And SQA is, of course, one of the 17 different organisations, ranging from local authorities, the teaching unions, Education Scotland and the Scottish Government, involved in the delivery of CFE. I should also make clear that while Mr Gillespie was involved in the development of the exams, he has not been involved in their implementation. Given we are now just 42 days from the first exam, it's fair to say that we have long passed the point where development was complete. That said, Mr Gillespie remains in post until after the first national exam has been taken, by which time all development work relating to the new hires will also be complete. It is therefore little surprise that the SQA, along with the other partners in delivering CFE, are able to say with confidence that the new qualifications will be unaffected by the change in personnel. The introduction of the new qualifications remains on track. Scottish Government and partners have provided an unprecedented level of support to help teachers and schools prepare for Curriculum for Excellence and the national qualifications, which are developed with considerable input from stakeholders with broad support. The most recent support package was announced on 21st February and was widely welcomed.
Can I thank the Cabinet Secretary for that answer, but assure him that parents remain concerned. I received an email yesterday from a concerned parent who said to me following the resignation, is there something so wrong that he wants to leave before he has to deal with sorting out the mess that he has created? It goes on to say, news of Mr Gillespie's resignation does not give me confidence and has made me even more worried about the way the new exams have been introduced. There seems to be constant testing with no time for consolidation in class. My son has continually complained about the courses being rushed and about the mistakes in the course materials that are being used to help revise. He was told in one class they did not have time to review the prelim paper. We have had to purchase extra resources at considerable expense to help him study for his exams. Not all parents are lucky enough to be in a position to afford this for their children. Can I ask the Cabinet Secretary what he has to say to this parent? Is he proud of his Government's record on the delivery of Curriculum for Excellence in the new exams, and will he take full responsibility for them?
Cabinet Secretary.
Presiding Officer, I think it is important when people involved in education at every level have concerns, that they raise those concerns in a way that is most supportive of young people and particularly young learners with 42 days to go to the exams. I stand very much with Jackie Brock, the CEO of Children in Scotland, who on this issue has today said that young people themselves will not be worrying about the departure of one individual from the SQA. Their main priority right now is to study and revise for their exams. They deserve the best and consistent support from all of us. If I have some advice for the member who has asked this question, it is probably best to contact the SQA to ask a question before contacting the newspapers. That will provide the best support that can be given to our young people. I'd be happy to outline for the member, either here or in writing, the very substantial support that has been given place for many years for the new national qualifications, remains in support there for CFE, and has been warmly welcomed by the teacher unions themselves, amongst others, every time we have put that support in place. What we now need to do is to move towards the first diet of exams, and I stress it, only 42 days away, in a way that supports our learners and does not simply seek publicity for politicians.
Presiding Officer, the Cabinet Secretary says that the support package is warmly welcomed by EIS. That was EIS who said they have not encountered as widespread anger, disappointment and frustration with the new Exams Authority as they are currently witnessing. I would also say to the Cabinet Secretary, I don't blame the Scottish Qualifications Authority, I blame the Cabinet Secretary, and it will be his responsibility when this goes wrong. Can I point him to what's happening in Prestwick Academy, because he seems to be unaware of this, and the parents and the head teacher there have made this known to the authorities with no response. There is a serious shortage of chemistry teachers there. They are unable to teach the Curriculum for Excellence course in its entirety before the day of the exam. The head teacher is having to get teachers in from other local authorities to teach the children on a Saturday to make sure that they can complete the coursework before the day of the exam. Is the Cabinet Secretary aware that, according to SQA guidelines, this will not be counted as exceptional circumstances when it comes to reviewing and marking the tests? Does he think that's acceptable? And will he take steps to ensure that where his government has failed to implement the national curriculum properly, pupils will not pay the heaviest price?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, of course, there is no national curriculum in Scotland, which is a fairly basic piece of information that requires to be known. Curriculum for Excellence is a methodology, it's a means of teaching. Can I also say that we work very closely with the SQA, with Education Scotland, and keep an overview of all developments in Scotland. The member is conflating a variety of different issues. I hope she's doing so out of genuine lack of knowledge of education in Scotland. If she's doing so in order to create an atmosphere where the young people studying these exams are 42 days away who are being put in a position of fear and concern, then I think that would be, frankly, and it's a word I choose carefully, reprehensible. Can I simply say, in terms of the unions, in the union's response, let me quote Lenny Flanagan, the General Secretary of the IAS, when the latest package of support was announced on the 21st of February. The IAS believes that the new support package is a positive development that will be very welcome in our secondary schools. Alan Mackenzie, the SSTA Acting General Secretary, it's a welcome announcement. Particularly the review to the verification arrangements, particularly for this year, should have a positive impact on the concerns of our members. I would ask the member to keep to the consensus supporting CSE, which has been so important in this chamber, to think of Scotland's young people and to think of them more than getting her name in the newspapers.
Colin Beattie.
Does the Cabinet Secretary agree that we must continue in the spirit which Curriculum for Excellence was created, cooperative working across all of the parties, to support Scotland's pupils and teachers as they take the curriculum forward and deliver lasting improvements in Scottish education?
Cabinet Secretary.
I very much agree that the consensus which we have developed in Scottish education around the introduction of CFE, which has been a consensus that lasted right through this Parliament, not without its difficulties, but it has lasted, has meant that we've been able to take this matter forward, ensuring the best interests of Scotland's young people and ensuring the best possible support for all teachers. That is what is going to succeed in the end of the day. And if anybody departs from that in the way that regrettably we've seen in the last 24 hours, then the losers will be Scotland's young people. And I think that's something that every member in this chamber needs to think about very carefully indeed.
Liam MacArthur.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The Cabinet Secretary will, I think, acknowledge that it's been a trying last few months. So over the last year, there have been a couple of interventions the Scottish Government has made in response to concerns that have been raised as we move towards the first diet of these exams. In that light, and bearing in mind his acknowledgement that lessons would need to be learnt as we move forward, not just with the new hires, but also with the National 4 and 5, does he think that effort to learn lessons will be hindered by the departure of Mr Gillespie, a key player in the rollout of these examinations?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, I don't think it will be affected in the slightest. As far as I'm aware, Mr Gillespie is not going to Mars. He will be, of course, available if anybody wants to talk to him. He is actually being promoted in another organisation, which I think probably does give the lie to any view that there is something wrong in this. The statement from the SQA has been very clear. I have had sight of the email to Kezia Dugdale from Janet Brown, who is in charge of the SQA, and I think it's really important that Janet Brown, as the head of the SQA, is listened to. Mr Bibby is shouting. I think it's quite important that members don't shout. Members don't seek to put themselves on the front of newspapers. What they do is they listen. Well, on this issue, I'm sorry there's laughter, I think it's really important in terms of Scotland's young people that we listen to this. With 42 days to go to the exams, Scotland will best be served by making sure that the consensus of the CFE continues in place. In the words of Jackie Brock, and I go back to her words today, the main priority right now for young people is to study and revise for the exams. They deserve the best and consistent support from all of us. Of course, there are lessons to be learned, and in the last debate in this chamber, I not only confirmed the OECD review, but in response to what I thought were very important questions from the Tory front bench, I confirmed that the Curriculum for Excellence Management Group would take a special look at what has taken place in the last few months. I think that's an important reassurance. What is not reassuring is people who, as I say, try to grandstand on this issue. They can only damage young people.
John Scott.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. As Ms Dugdale has raised the specific issue of Prestwick Academy in my constituency, can the Cabinet Secretary assure Parliament that he will take an interest in and offer all support to Prestwick Academy head teacher Mr Bowen and South Ayrshire Council in their efforts to find chemistry teachers for Prestwick Academy at this time?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, of course, as the constituency member knows, he has spoken to me before about when teacher supply issues have arisen in his constituency, and I've been very positive in trying to assist, and that's what the government will do. But of course, what the member did was raise those issues with me directly. The member didn't come to the chamber and use them as a backup argument for another story. Of course, if constituency members and others have concerns, of course we will try and make sure that everything is done to support Scottish education. Supporting Scottish education is a job that I undertake, and I would hope that other members thought they had a role to play in that too.
Neil Bibby.
The lack of leadership and complacency that we've seen from the Cabinet Secretary on the implementation of new exams is breathtaking and is completely unacceptable to treat kids sitting their exams in this way. It's a mess of the Cabinet Secretary's making. He will need to answer major questions after the exam diet, but at the moment he is the man ultimately responsible and he needs to sort it out. Teachers and pupils have asked for free exam practice papers.
Mr Bibby?
Where are they? What is Mike Russell going to do to alleviate the other concerns of teachers, pupils and parents? But if he is so confident everything in the garden is rosy, will he give a clear, categorical assurance today, on the record, that everything will go to plan with the new hires and the new exams?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, I've been giving, Dr Allen and I, and Dr Allen takes day-to-day responsibility for education, have been giving that assurance. I've been giving it since I became Cabinet Secretary, because I've actually been working on this issue. I think the unfortunate thing we've seen from Ms Dugdale and Mr Bibby is what they've been doing is trying to get themselves publicity. And that's not positive in terms if you're 42 days from the exam diet. I mean, the list of support that we have given and this government has given, along with others to CFE, speaks for itself. From 2011 onwards, we've been adding support into the system. We've been doing what's needed. What we haven't been doing is trying to undermine confidence in the system for party political advantage. It's not party political advantage too, because I have to say the response I've had from most people who read the item in question and have spoken to me, when I've explained the circumstances, they have been disgusted that politicians would behave in that way. And I do think, for the sake of Scotland's young people, this should stop and stop now. It is the consensus around CFE that is going to make the difference. It's got us here. And to try and break it now is very foolish indeed.
Question number 2, Stuart McMillan.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what its position is on reports that the Minister of Defence is seeking to increase the level of liquid waste that it discharges into the Clyde at Faslane Naval Dockyard.
Secretary Richard Lockhead.
SEPA have been reviewing the agreement that is in place with the MOD covering the disposal of radioactive waste into the Clyde from Faslane and are proposing to lower the permitted limits of discharges from the site. Whilst this more stringent regime should in theory benefit our environment, the MOD has indicated that the actual level of discharges from the site may increase over the next few years due to the increasing number of submarines that will be based there, albeit the discharges are still expected to be well within the new limits. Whilst I welcome SEPA's plans to strengthen the permitted limits for the site, this is of course another example of an agreement between SEPA and the MOD which is not legally binding. I announced last week that we are proposing to remove the Crown exemption from it for MOD sites in Scotland, which will give SEPA a binding mandate to regulate rather than rely on a gentleman's agreement in such circumstances.
Stuart McMillan.
Thank you. I thank the Cabinet Secretary for that response. But given the secrecy of the MOD regarding the incident at the Vulcan site that has recently emerged, can we be sure that SEPA has been made fully aware of the full details regarding the situation at Faslane?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, it's fair to say that the Vulcan incident that was discussed in this chamber last week has indeed broken trust between the MOD and the people of Scotland. However, that is why we did give a commitment to bring forward the proposed removal of the Crown exemption for such sites so that SEPA can be empowered to regulate those sites in the way they do every other site in Scotland. And that is why we have to tackle this culture of secrecy which was unveiled with the Vulcan incident and make sure that in future we don't have a repeat of such incidents.
Stuart McMillan.
Thank you. It's concerning that the MOD have a culture of secrecy over radioactivity, and new Westminster parliamentary questions reveal that the Secretary of State for Scotland wasn't informed of the incident at Vulcan until over 8 months after the incident. This is despite the Defence Secretary claiming that key ministers were informed throughout. Does the Cabinet Secretary agree that the so-called respect agenda has completely disappeared?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, again, I do think that the respect agenda has been abandoned given the events surrounding the Vulcan incident, which could not be more serious given it does involve radioactivity and MOD sites that have nuclear facilities. In terms of the Secretary of State, Philip Hammond's statement in the House of Commons recently that all key ministers within the government were, of course, aware of these issues throughout in terms of UK government, I understand Alistair Carmichael, the current Secretary of State for Scotland, has just revealed in a parliamentary answer in the House of Commons that shows that the former Scottish Secretary of State, Michael Moore, was not told about the incident at Vulcan until over 8 months after the incident, of course in contradiction to Philip Hammond's claim that key ministers were indeed kept in the loop. And of course that is despite the former Secretary of State, Michael Moore, visiting the Vulcan plant in April 2012 at a time when it was shut down due to the incident. So if the Scotland Office Ministers are not being kept in the loop, as well as the local community, as well as this Parliament, as well as this Government, as well as the wider people of Scotland not kept in the loop, surely it is understandable why people do believe there is a complete culture of secrecy and cover-ups within the MOD in Scotland.
Annabel Goldie.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The background to Stuart McMillan's question, of course, assumes Scotland will remain within the United Kingdom and thousands of new jobs will be created at Fastlane, not destroyed by the SNP. So will the Minister confirm what submission the Scottish Government has made to the SEPA consultation and, post a no vote in September, how the Scottish Government, on a regular basis, will engage with the MOD?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, SEPA will, of course, share the conclusions they reach as a result of the consultation with Scottish ministers in due course. However, in terms of the impact of the referendum on this debate, it is now more clear than ever before that we do need a yes vote so Scotland does become independent, so that we can take a decision as a people that we do not want nuclear-powered and nuclear-armed submarines based in Scotland, and would much rather that investment was devoted towards more conventional defence forces and other jobs and needs in Scotland.
Thank you. We now move to the next item of business, which is a debate on motion number 9355, in the name of Kevin Stewart, on the Scottish Government's third National Planning Framework and review of Scottish planning policy. Members who wish to speak in this debate should press the request to speak button now, and I call on Kevin Stewart to speak to and move the motion on behalf of the local government and region.